What's up, y'all? I'm Sergey. I'm a developer from Toronto. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to deploy a similar chatbot to AWS using SST. And if you're already clicking out of it because there's too many abbreviations, I get it. This is going to be a bit more technical. So for those of you who don't know, SST is a framework that makes it easy for you to build modern full stack applications on your own infrastructure. And so, what does that really mean? Well, for example, if you look at this chatbot right here, this is built by Vercel, and there is a very handy deploy to Vercel button, which kind of takes care of a lot of the deployment for you. There's a lot of AI tools out there, Lovable, Bolt, and all these other ones that abstract away all the complexities of worrying about deploying your own applications. How do you manage all of that? And AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, if you want to look at something confusing, here is my IAM identity and access management credentials. So it is a doozy. They're not the greatest user experience. I haven't actually used AWS in over 6 or 7 years. But I wanted to give it a try because I got some credits through AWS Activate, which obviously is something that I don't want to just give up on. And so, yes, they're paying for it. Yes, it's a little more complicated than something like Vercel or something else, but it is doable. And I'm going to try and show you how to do that. Just to top it all off, I actually recreated the Vercel template for this chatbot with SST. And so in terms of features, it's pretty much feature parity. The difference is we are, instead of using Vercel Postgres with Neon, we're using Amazon RDS. Instead of using Vercel Blob, we're using Amazon S3. The AI SDK is using Bedrock, which is one of the Vercel AI SDK supported providers. And instead of OpenAI, we're using the Amazon one, which is Amazon Nova Pro for this one. Yeah, so go ahead, you can get started. This video will help you kind of set it all up because there's a couple of steps, and this is where we dive into SST a little bit more. Yeah, so essentially it's a way for you to orchestrate and manage all of your resources, kind of like the ones that you need. You can set it up in a config file. I'll show you that later. It's not just for AWS, it works with Cloudflare, and it works with, as you can see, 150 providers. The docs are amazing. Shout out to Dax and Jay. Jay actually spoke at one of my meetups recently. That's how I kind of learned more about SST. We'll talk about OpenNext a little bit afterwards. But to get started, the things that you'll need are AWS accounts. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, and mind you, it is a pretty lengthy process. But within 20 minutes, you should be up and running. You go through the management account, you create an organization, you create some users. One of them is going to be root. Then there's going to be different users for different stages for you to better manage your different environments, dev and prod accounts. You will need to configure the AWS CLI, and you will need to log into your session using your terminal. And once all of that is done, you should be able to run SSD commands. So what do we have here? Just by the way, I'm using Warp as my terminal. I've been using it for a lot of years. There are a couple of videos that I've mentioned Warp in the past, but yeah, like look at this even now. Without typing anything in, it knew the command that I recently ran, and it already is suggesting it to me using the Warp AI agent, which is exactly what we're going to do. And npxssd.dev runs this multiplexer, which is a very fancy word, and I don't actually, it just like manages a bunch of runtimes for you. You can tab through them to see what's happening here. I'll explain a couple of these things. The tunnel is something that you will need to make sure that your RDS database from Amazon, AWS, you're able to connect to it locally. So this is essentially like a local tunnel porting that information through. To set that up, again, I would really encourage you to follow the docs. I believe this is going to be in the drizzle section tunnel. Yep. So you just run this one sudo npx set tunnel install command, and that should work. You have your AI chatbot AWS and AI chatbot AWS Studio. Now, where are these names coming from? What's going on here? Let's dive into the actual code. So you have this SSD config file, which is essentially your main entry point for anything related to SST, which then provisions and deploys resources to AWS or whatever provider you have. There is the name of the application, which is AI Chatbot AWS. There is some config here. Don't have to worry about it too much. Again, the docs are super good at describing all of this information. But for our purposes, what do we have here? We have a couple of secrets: the Bedrock access key, the secret access key, and the auth secret. These are used by the corresponding. So auth secret is for auth .ts, which is next auth. By default, if you look at the diffs, that's actually a good idea to go through right now. If we look at the diffs of what actually changed, if we look at auth.config, you'll see that I actually added this secret. Here, because by default it was using an environment variable. With SST, you actually don't need any .env files, and SST handles those environments for you, which is really cool. Where is my index.ts? I think I'm configuring my AI models here. So as you can see, I'm creating an Amazon Bedrock provider using the credentials, using these resources. So Bedrock access key ID matches the Bedrock access key ID here. To set them up in your terminal, super easy. You go npx sst secret set, then you give it the key and then the value. So new key ABC 1 2 3. And you'll be able to list them and view them and edit them in the future. So we're setting up the environment keys for Bedrock. For that, you have to go and create these keys in your IAM access management. If you go to users, you create a user, you give it a name, and then you attach permissions to it. I have it set in the README of the template. You should be able to do that. Once you created one, you have security credentials and you can create an access key and you get the information from there. One more thing with Bedrock is if you go to the model catalog, also, yeah, this UI. Let's see, light. Okay, this is a little bit better. By default, all of these will be disabled. So I kind of went through this process and I didn't request access for them. So you'll have to request access and then you'll get access based on, like, you can request individual access for some of these models, or I just created access for all of them. And yeah, you get a pretty good list of models you work with. So that's that. What else is here? These are the different model selectors. Yep. So setting up Postgres, instead of having this Postgres URL, you have your resource. And if we look at the resource, here's the database resource, AWS Chatbot DB. Again, these are, you can call them whatever. This is kind of the pattern that I went with. I don't think you should be, like, if you have separate projects, you probably want to use separate names for them. This is my Next.js resource. And you essentially set these up and then you link all of them down here. This is a separate command to make Drizzle Studio work, which is, as you can see, matches the name here. And so we have local dot, or I have it open here, local Drizzle Studio, where you can see this is actually an interface of the AWS Postgres database. This is the local host that's running. So SST dev kind of looks at package.json and it runs nextdev, which is my dev command in package.json. And so as you can see from AWS AI Chatbot AWS, this is my command here. You can see some things happening. So if I go back to localhost 3000, yeah, it redirects. Again, local next builds are a bit slow. That's a whole separate topic. But if we go to, you can see that it compiled it in half a second. And then, yeah. So that's happening. This is really cool. What else did I want to talk about? The other update was to upload file. We can take a look at it here. So this now uses S3 client, which gets set up. And then I have this public URL, which is based on a random key that I generate, and it puts it into the sign URL, which is the URL to access the S3 bucket. Don't have to worry about that. But it works. If you go to the studio, hey, what's up? It uses Bedrock to talk to me. Hello, is it hanging? I hope not. This chat should have persisted in our local database. If I refresh here, yeah, there's another chat here. If you look at all the messages, hey, what's up, assistant? Yeah, all of this works. And, oh, I'm here to help you with whatever you need. How can I assist you today? Nice. I can add images. They will get uploaded to S3. We can view all of these resources. If you log into AWS, it's about 60 different resources that get created for like the configuration that I have. I'm sure it goes up and down depending on what you're using, but it's very, very exciting that I don't need to manually create these databases through this dashboard and manage all of that. SST orchestrates all of that for me, which makes it super, super. It's not the level of Vercel or Lovable, where it's like a lot more hands-offish. This is still amazing. SST also provides a console for you where you can see all of your different deployments. I got notifications in my email for logs that were that had issues, which is amazing. Yeah, so that's the dev command. And then similarly, if you want to deploy something, npx SST deploy, and then you give it a stage, which were the different stages that were set up for different AWS accounts, stage dev. And again, initially, the first time you run it, it will take some time. So again, it's not as magical as something like Vercel, where it seems like, but because it's setting up all these different resources for you, it's really doing a lot of work behind the scenes. As you can see, it's skipped. So it's very smart in realizing like if you edit the SST config, it will look at resources that were changed and update those for you, as opposed to like deleting and rebuilding from scratch, which is amazing. And now you can see it's running my build command, which is running on AWS, creating all of these different resources for me for, you can see image optimizer function. So all the things that Vercel abstracts away from you, this is doing the heavy lifting, which is great. And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't use Vercel. I'm not saying you shouldn't use Lovable or any of the other tools. This is for people to have an option to build the same tooling that you see a lot of these developers or people in the industry are building. But for example, they got free credits from AWS, or their company doesn't allow them to create Vercel accounts, but they still want to deploy these technologies on there. So SSD makes it a lot more approachable for you to be able to deploy these things. And as you can see, I have connected a subdomain to it, which is so the domain is hosted on Cloudflare, and you go through the docs and custom domains. You go to Cloudflare, and it's very easy for you to set up and have it going. It is pretty magical. And so, yeah, I think that's it. If you have any questions, if you are using SST and want to chat about it, if you have some questions or issues, let me know. Join the SST Discord channel. This became an SST plug. Yeah. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.